How many years in total did you serve?
20 for the murder. I was in the special secure units. It's been shown on Whitemore documentary recently, the severity of how I was held, what I had to go through whilst I was held. People have no idea the restrictions and the implications of the grade I was held at. Triple category A. The only man in this country at the time, whilst on remand, unconvicted, to be placed on those conditions. Okay, I was born in the countryside in Harefield, Middlesex. I had beautiful surroundings to grow up in, but very violent. Parents split up, so a beautiful area, Harefield, Middlesex.
And what was your education like, Kev?
I'm a clever kid, but I messed around at school. I got expelled at 14. I went to a went to another school, and then I went to... education's good, but I just love to mess around. I had too much energy, but like attention deficit order. You know, I'm a lot better now than I am, because when you're used to sitting in a cell, walking back and forward, eventually you get control of the brain and your hypersensitivity.
So Kev, tell me about how your life took a turn and you went down the life of crime.
Well, I didn't go down the life of crime. It took me on that path from my childhood, factors in my childhood as you're going up into life. I then met a young girl in a new school when I got expelled. Started working security on the doors, but that took me off into areas that I shouldn't have really gone into. Kidnappings and things like that. I'm not proud of that. Kidnapping people who deserved it, I'm proud of that. I'm not proud of, kidnapping people who didn't deserve it. I've done that a couple of occasions. Got the wrong person, but I was not for my own fault, they were put forward. So crime, as an early age, started when I was really proper crime, about 18.
What was the first thing you ever got arrested for?
Smashing up a building site when I was a kid. And then violence when I was 15, of an older boy. I got done for GBH on that. Got down to 8, broke his nose, had to punch up with him. And then...
How did it get so serious? So tell me as well, Kevin, about the incident that changed your life.
The incident that changed my life... I'm quite... look, you can imagine what I looked like when I was 18. Slim-faced, 11 stone 7, boxing. So I was on the security doors. That then ventured out into other areas, working with a lot of older men, a lot of capable men. Back in the day when you had doormen, you needed doormen, not because the country's now national policy is to have security staff everywhere. So I was working some real rough houses when I didn't look like old enough to be in the gaff. With that came, I went away for a kidnapping, 2 years. Should have got a lot more, but the judge should have took the law into my own hands. A young girl and a baby was threatened with a knife, and I went, and the police were called. They couldn't do nothing about it. The people came back again. It's a bit more to the story than that. So I took, so there was £100,000 worth of equipment that was stolen. The girl in the business, one of the ladies who worked in the business, told the owners. One of the owners was my friend. They went to the police. The police had not enough evidence to do anything. The gentleman that stole the goods came back and was shaking the doors of the offices and trying to get in. So put a knife to a girl and a baby and said, "We'll cut you and the baby if you go back to the police again." So I then came onto the fold and thought, I'm not having that. And I took away the gentleman who was involved in that gang. But he wasn't. It was his mate, but he was put forward. So I did some terrible stuff to him, which I regret. I've since met him in restorative justice. But a massive transformation for me, and seeing someone in front of me and hearing how he felt after what I'd done to him. All I thought, when I was beating him up and doing stuff to him, is that he'd put a knife to a girl and a baby. So that was all I see. And then I see this man years later that it wasn't the man. It was a massive transformation for me. I went to prison for that. Jury said they made a wrong decision. They came back. Judge said immediate bail. application and an appeal. I went downstairs, said, don't appeal, don't apply for bail. I'm happy with the sentence. I've done 6 months remand. I got released on a hearing whilst I was on remand because the police got caught out lying again. Chief Constable of Police writing down statements wrong and witnesses being phoned up at the end of their road saying, meet us at the end of the road. There's a picture of Kevin Lane, can you write a statement out and name him? So I got bail 6 months after being remanded for that. And then I went back to court 14 months later and I was found guilty. Like I say, the jury came back and said they made the wrong decision. I've never heard of that before. And I told my barrister not to apply for bail and don't apply for appeal. I'll go to prison, I did it, I didn't give evidence, I'm happy with the sentence. And then I got out and I went to live in Spain because I'd had enough of England. That didn't work out. The mother of my children, she came out with the children. I ended up falling out with people on the island. John Palmer, Brinksmack Bullion, not him per se, but some of his workers. Again, I used to have massive problems because I looked so young and sweet-faced, but I had a pretty girl on my arm. That causes trouble, unfortunately. And it caused trouble that an evening when I was on the Golf de Sur in a steakhouse, private golf club, I lived on there. There was a problem, people were talking about drugs. I complained. Next thing, I got 3 people in front of me. Great big bulldog of a man, being quite aggressive towards me. And he said, you want to calm down? I said, got fuck all to do with you, stay out of it. He had arms the size of my legs. Big bald head, big old chest, right? He must have thought, who's this cheeky little bleeder? But I weren't frightened of anybody, and I say that respectfully. I just thought, don't tread on my toes, I won't stamp on yours. Do not try to threaten me, because I will react. I don't care if there's 10 of you in front of me, I will react to you. So leave me alone. And that stems from my childhood, and my brother having a car accident, having to wear a big Mr. Magoo crash helmet when I was in the infants, 3 or 4. He nearly died, helicopter, ambulance and all that. But then with that comes a lot of abuse from children. So I was always fighting as a child for my older brother. And then my mum and dad split up when I was a kid. And then, of course, it escalates. And you go through school fighting for your older brother and your younger sisters. But I was a happy-go-lucky kid, always happy, always Frank Spencer impersonations, Norman Wisdom. You wouldn't remember Norman Wisdom, would you? Oh, Mr. Rigsby. And doing stuff like that, ventriloquist acts. So the happy-go-lucky child started going off on another path through a tragedy for my brother having an accident, and then it spirals out of control. And you're on that spiral, aren't you? So then I got released, came back from... So I got released from that, I went to Tenerife, came back to England. I thought I'm not living out of here, it's like a mini England, too much trouble. I came away from England to get away from that type of carnage. And unfortunately, they're implicated in a murder. And that murder ended up taking me to prison for, in total now, 22 years nearly. I served 20. I was in the special secure units. It's been shown on Whitemore documentary recently, the severity of how I was held, what I had to go through whilst I was held. People have no idea the restrictions and the implications of the grade I was held at. Triple category A. The only man in this country at the time, whilst on remand, unconvicted, to be placed on those conditions. And Michael Howard, I believe he's dead now, so I don't want to speak ill of him, but he introduced restrictions, permanent and closed visits, permanent. You don't get to touch anybody. All massive security implications. Legal bugging of your legal visits. Legal bugging. Past it. Bug their legal visits. Listen to what they're saying. Naturally, in cells, as well as social visits. I went to court, had a hung jury for murder.
Can I just go back a step there? So how did that all begin, the charge of murder?
I came back from Tenerife. I had a car that was stolen the first night. Quite unnatural because I put there was an immobiliser on it and I took a piece off the engine and they still managed to take my car off our drive and get it, and off they go, as if, I don't know, they seem to know a bit about cars. Travellers did that, local travellers in the area, and I managed to get the car back. I went onto their site and said, look, I know you've had the car, I want the car back. I've got a load of petrol, I'm not having it, all right? You're in caravans, I'll just set this fucking campsite alight. Give me that car back. And they were very respectful. He said, I don't want any trouble with you, mister. No fools, don't get me wrong, no fools. But they respected that I went on to there. I said, I know you've got my car. You've come round in the daytime to look at it, and that evening it's been nicked. And it's been used in a round raid. The police said it's been used in a round raid by gypsies. 2 and 2, you've got my car. Now I want it back. No ag. No problem. We get your car back, paid for the damage, and they delivered the car back. A little while after, like a week or so after, I can't remember now. But through that, I was loaned a car. I went out in that car for a weekend, took it straight back, an old banger. I had the kids in the car, mother and my children. So I took that car back. That car was then being driven by another male who was the police officer, knows me, who see that car being driven after I dropped it back and said it was not Kevin Lane driving that car. Give a description of the man with dark hair and that. And the car was subsequently duplicated, the number plate was duplicated, and another car was used at the scene using that number plate. So that then tied it into me. But the car that was used at the scene was a 323i. The car that I used was a 320. And there's factors in relation to this that are all in the book, Fitting Up and Fighting Back. And there's no black order on my book. It's been out for 2 years now, and all the facts in there are genuine, factual. So I was brought into the conviction as a result of being tied to that car. And then a corrupt police officer was brought into the case. He subsequently went to prison for 4 years. 2 police informers who were working with the police, who was originally arrested for the murder, bragging about it, showing off a gun. They actually gave the card that was used in the murder to somebody else and asked him to burn it. He'd give a statement. His statement was withheld from me for 12 years. Otherwise, the original suspects would have been in a dock. And that's because they were going around admitting to the murder, calling themselves Ronnie and Reggie. I wonder which one was Ronnie. Right? And then, well, I think they might have both been. So, fair play to them though. They were showing off the gun in the pub. They said it was used in the murder or at the scene, as well as bragging to doing the murder. So they got arrested, and then they brought in the police handler who's worked with them previously on other cases, and they moulded the case around me. They turned around and said I was a prolific contract killer, killing people in this country. There's many unsolved murders, not many. There was 3 police forces waiting to dock arrest me if I'd have got a not guilty. Now I say this, how the bloody hell you be at my door based on what this fella's turned around and said? Why don't you go back and ask him how come he knows so much about the murders? Because up until this point, I've never been arrested for a murder. Please explain to me. Of course, what he was telling them was so severe that I was committing murders for the Chechen government, the Prime Minister of the Chechen government in this country, and other people in this country, £100,000 a hit. So, of course, they thought, we'll clean the books up here. Doesn't matter what the evidence showed about them taking it in another direction. And the book shows that. Now, I've had law lords, I've had MPs, I've had all sorts of people right across the board. So how is your conviction still standing? What is going on here? Panorama covered my case, Last Chance for Justice, Mark Daly and Louise Shortier, Tracy Alexandra, Susan Shaw for the Forensic Institution of Science. So the evidence used in my case should never have been used. It's false and it's wrong. Yeah, I got found guilty based on that.
So when you're in court, and I guess all this is going against you and inevitably you are found guilty, how do you feel?
Well, I was in Court 2 of the Old Bailey, which is a high security court, and it's a lot of oak wood, dark and dingy, and it's got an era about it, the Old Bailey. And the first chapter of my book, I keep going back to it, but it says, don't judge me till you've walked a mile in my shoes. And I'm in the dock, and the jury have come back, and they came out with a guilty. And I thought, God, this is it now. My life's over. The police had asked for 30 years to be imposed on me, sentenced. 30 years! I thought, are you kidding me? I was 27 at the time. I thought, fucking 30 years. And then the judge never sentenced me. He found me guilty. Well, sorry, the jury found me guilty, and he said, stand up. I was sentenced. There's only one sentence I can sentence you to, and that is life. Take him down. And I never knew the difference between a recommended sentence, which means a judge gives you a sentence in court, and he specifies in court that you will serve a minimum of 30 years. all right, which was happening in connected to my case. I'll tell you about that in a minute. So he never gave me an open recommendation, and I got the tariff 3 years later, which is the tariff is from the Home Secretary, and it said I was to serve 18 years. I was over the moon. I got it going down to lunch, and there was a screw I didn't really like. No one liked him. Lane, I went, what is it? What do you want? He said, I've got something for you, New Year's Eve. Give me this bit of paper, my tariff. He said 18 years. I went, what a result! And he's gone. Something not right about him. I thought, I've just got 18 years. I was expecting to get 30. I've got 12 years off my sentence. Oh no, I was innocent. Imagine being innocent and getting 30. But being innocent and getting 18, you thought, God, there's light at the end of the tunnel. There's hope on the horizon. And all I did was work on my case day and night, no TV. I thought, I'm not having this, you're not going to do this to me. And I had my own prison censor. And I had letters out all the time. So mail coming in was quite a lot. And I brought the criminal justice to the negotiating table, and I finally won my case and got out. And they said, well, I say I won my case, I haven't been back to the Court of Appeal yet, because the criminal justice system is corrupt to the core. It's like the canteen culture. You've got people working in the CCRC, the Criminal Cases Review Commission, that were connected to my case. The Chief Constable of Police at the time of my arrest was one of the 14 CCRC commissioners. They also turned around and said that there's staff within the CCRC, that it's inevitable that they would know staff or someone who's involved in my case. But this has not caused us to form the view of biased. Well, it does, doesn't it? I mean, let's have it right. You're not going to be in... And further to that, there was barristers working in there it's a trust called the Callister Trust, and the Callister Trust was set up by Lord Chief Justice Rafferty. Lord Chief Justice Rafferty was sitting with Callister at his deathbed. That was the prosecutor in my case, about 4 weeks after I was found guilty. So he was on his last legs, bent the rules quite a bit in my case and stuff like that. In that, when Lord Chief Justice Rafferty was sitting at his bed, she said, we're going to set up this trust to help trainee barristers. Well, the trainee barristers are working in the Criminal Cases Review Commission. So I had 3 reviews, and each time it's going in front of trainee barristers, as well as qualified barristers, I would imagine. But what chance do you stand? So I go up on appeal. 2 weeks before I go up on appeal, because I got released from the prison system, 2 weeks before I go up on appeal, Lord Chief Justice Rafferty steps into my appeal and Lord Chief Justice Hughes steps down. I go up in front of the appeal and get told to go away. And my barrister was, he swore in court. And Duncan Campbell, renowned journalist, and so on and so forth, many people. I can't believe I'm still sitting here convicted, because my conviction goes right to the top within the criminal justice system in many departments, CPS, Hertfordshire Police, Criminal Cases Review Commission, Forensic Institute, etc., etc., etc. But if the case gets back to the Court of Appeal, which it should do, I've got to get a new barrister, because my barrister's now become a judge. I've had COVID. I've had to go through COVID when my case, my drafts, my papers are meant to be rewritten. So I'm going to get a new barrister and a new solicitor, because my solicitor, Maslin Merchant, is unobtainable. If you are watching this, Maslin, please return my calls, because you don't. And I don't know if you're ill, I don't know what's going on, or if you've been spoken to by MI6 or MI5, because it's very bizarre that you've fought for me for all these years and now you're not returning my calls. And I've been told by somebody else that they're getting pressure from other departments.
How many years in total did you serve?
20 for the murder. Yeah. And Maslin Merchant was with me since 2004, fighting all the way. Great, Hatchkiss Hughes and Bill, great solicitor. But I believe is either something happened personally in his life, or he's been spoken to, because it doesn't make sense.
Do you think that changed you in any way? Because I feel like doing 20 years for a crime that you've never committed can change someone.
Massively. To come out the other side, though, with compassion and sense of fair play still. It has changed me in that I believe there's grey areas in life, and not everybody who's in prison are bad just because they're in prison. A lot of people, unfortunately, things happen in their life, but it doesn't make them bad people.
And who was actually killed in that murder?
There was a villain a gentleman called Robert McGill, local villain, hard man, and he was executed. Yeah.
Did they ever find out? Did they?
They know who done it. You can't go. You've got people going around bragging that they done it. I mean, the two fellas in my book who got caught with a car, like I say, they gave it to someone and asked him to burn it and dispose of it, showing the gun off, admitting to murders. But further to that, in the book, they've engaged in confidential chats with the police, where they want to assist the police with this inquiry, and they decide, I give them a number of facts. Now, if you're charged with joint enterprise, then you are involved in that murder. So whatever that involvement is, whether you like that Raoul Malt fella, there's an Asian lad, he came into Franklin, got 20 years for taking a bit of food to him. But he weren't a criminal, he just went along for the ride, stupid mistake, got 20 years, he was going to university and all sorts. Just an Indian kid, duck out of water, 20 years. So the conviction is now seen massively as a grave miscarriage of justice, but I'm still fighting. It's changed me. It's changed me a lot now, Aaron, in that I've come home, I've won my freedom. I was given natural life. I said, you shall remain in prison indefinitely at one point, because I wouldn't do the offending behaviour courses. They wanted me to speak about the index offence. I said, I'm not doing that. Anyway, I won a court case to address my offending behaviour based on other crimes that I committed. And it's affected a lot of people in prison now, because they can go along the same path and hopefully win their release. But prison changed me. It changed me now that I'm fighting for my conviction to be overturned, and there's so many stumbling blocks in front of me. Even down to being recalled recently, and they've accepted they recalled me wrongfully, let me out of prison. There's been some heads that have rolled as well as over what happened to me. When you get released by the Secretary of State at 7 o'clock on a Friday night, you got to be gone, we want you out of here. The Secretary of State's going mad. It's like, chuck me out. So they've admitted their defeat. They've offered me $2,500 or something like that, compensation for 4 months. I think it starts at 30 and goes up. Yet I've now got to pay a solicitor to act for me privately, because you can't get legal aid. Although they've admitted defeat by releasing me and offering me money, because I haven't got the funds to take that further, that case just sits there. Because it won't be 1,000, it'll be 1,500 quid, it'll be $2,500, and then it keeps going and going and going, barristers' costs and things like that. I've already had that once, 24 grand, got me nowhere. So life's a little bit difficult in a minute.
That must build up a lot of resentment, surely. I guess all these times, the position that you've been put in, I guess it seems almost as hurdle after hurdle after hurdle.
It's hurdle after hurdle. And if you going through the courts for access to a child and you are a criminal based on paper, not that you are an excellent father who's never missed one visit, drives 2.5, 3 hours, sometimes more, to see your son for an hour and a half visit, go all through that for the courts to lambast you because of your conviction and treat you differently as a result. So I was seeing my son, this is by way of an example, separated from the mother of my children. I was with her 4 months, she fell pregnant. We engaged in a relationship, didn't work, separated. I want to see my son. Starts all the control stuff. And I've literally, it's going in my favour now. So because of my conviction, Kafkas had an investigation a year. Didn't see my son. I said, but I've been seeing him. How come you just stop? Is there any harm come to him? Is there any allegations that I've harmed him or anything like that? No. Well, how can you stop me seeing him for a year? It can't be in the interest of my son. Well, they did. Yeah, and it came to nothing. They closed the case. And social services said he's an excellent father. He just needs a handover because him and the mother can't get on. Been to court, won access, just to get weekends. Here I am now. 5 months I've been waiting for another emergency hearing because the mother stopped the contact again. Because I get Osman warnings on my life where people are threatening to kill me based on my conviction. I was trying to overturn it.
Well, sorry, what was that? You get Osman?
Oh, an Osman warning is a threat against your life. The police have received information that someone's going to try to kill you or such. And I've been receiving them since 2006. I had 4 in prison, stayed in the same cell on the same landings. No one ever tried to kill me.
Why do you think why would someone want to kill you, Kev?
Well, the people in the book that I mentioned are trying to get me killed to shut me up. Because it quite clearly shows that they were working with the police and fitting me up, going around bragging about the murder and so on. And then they subsequently get found guilty of another murder, another contract killing, once their handler gets sent to prison for acts that he did in another case. They don't want me to keep publicising the miscarriage of justice. And there's other people, there's police officers come forward to the BBC and said they've seen statements that were written out by the corrupt police officer, and he said he had to think carefully how to word them and had to sign it. Stuff like that, you know. And my conviction is so corrupt, it's unbelievable, but...
Well, I was about to ask, what was the craziest thing you've seen in jail in the last 20 years?
Number one governor sitting in my cell dressed in suspenders. No, that ain't happened. But that made a good snatch video, wouldn't it? I have had governors in my cell sitting on my bed, woman governor and all. I thought, oi, here we go. But I was high risk at the time, so everywhere in my cell was, you know, every time I walked in a cell it was recorded. Lane's gone in that cell, what's he doing in there? The craziest thing I've ever seen in prison. People go down to the violence all the time, you know, the sheer violence was atrocious. People slashed to bits, knives stuck in them and boiling hot fat tips over their heads, ears falling off. I've seen blokes battered to pieces, battered. Sexual deviants in there, shagging people, getting the old pork dagger or the old black sausage sucked. All right, so just give a bit of heroin. If you know you got to do something, ain't you? Not me. I mean, I've never given and I've never taken. That ain't happening. But I've seen a lot of things in there, sad things, where I've seen people who are on the landings from mental health hospitals because they were so full at one time, coming into the landings. Real severe difficulties, are mentally unstable, should not have been on them landings. And then I've seen people shagging them. Not actually seeing them do it, but know that they are in prison. So there's that side of things that I thought, my God, is this what I'm... Because believe it or not, a lot of the old school criminals, like Kenny Collins, he's a very good friend of mine. And they have a real old school set of principles where you definitely got to have respect for your fellow interns. If you lose that respect for them, then you've got nothing left principle-wise. You've committed crimes, but there's certain set of rules and guidelines that they used to hold on to. That's all now gone. They're sticking spoons up people's backside to get their drugs out of their bums and things like that in prison now. Burning their feet and tipping oil over their feet with hot water to get money sent to an account. It's atrocious what's going on in there now. So, I've seen a lot of changes in there, and prisons ain't the same as what they once were, and the clientele aren't the same. And with that comes a lot of problems. So anybody that's thinking about going to prison now, you are going into a mug's game. You're losing your life. This isn't a dress rehearsal. One chance at this. If you want to get in there, be abused, will be welcomed into the fold 1 minute and then robbed and stabbed the next because you don't fit in with the crowd or something's gone on or you don't get on with that gang over there or someone else come in or you stabbed your brother's mate and you don't, whatever. Loads of implications. If you think you're going into prison now to have a great time, you're a fucking mug. Because there's no way of life. I don't mean that to insult people individually, but collectively, it's a mug's game. Why do gangsters get seen as heroes when they're not? Angels with dirty faces. He was asked to cry at the gallows and he told the vicar to clear off, but he'd started crying at the gallows so the young kids could see he was weak. But he wouldn't have done that otherwise. I like that film. Watched it with black and white when I was a kid. The heroism should be looked at the soldiers and the special services of this country, the nurses, the fire brigade, and right across the board in the criminal justice system who are doing very difficult jobs and overstretched services for the better of this country and other countries. And they're the real heroes, but criminals are not.
So, Kevin, when I was researching your story, I often saw the words contractor killer, hitman associated with your name. Do you think that was a fair label to have next to your name?
I'll always say it's not fair, but the arrest and the charge sheet said contract killing. That has an implication that you've not just murdered someone through anger, you're killing, they say you're killing someone in cold blood for money, which make you a psychopath. But you go Well, if you was in the army, they're killing people, trained to kill. Are they psychopaths? So I don't quite agree with the terminology, not that I'm saying I did the murder, but to be labelled a psychopath or contract killer, and it still continues now. So trial by media was great for the media. #1 contract killer in the country, in the Times and all these other papers. And now, the positive of that, as crazy as that seems, is I'm free. And I'll say, well, meet me, talk to me, see what I do in my life today, see what people have said about me as a person and the people have come forward in relation to my unsafe conviction, and judge me.
Kev, what would you say is the worst memory of your life, aside from the conviction?
My mother and father separating. Not having my father as a child.
How do you think that affected you?
Massively. Massively. I'd get to the football ground an hour or 2 hours, sometimes probably 2 hours earlier, just sitting there imagining my dad turning up in case he gets there early, thinking the game's early. I had no idea if he even knew about me playing football, but there's people in the village who knew my dad and blah, 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 and I thought, you never know. So I have to get there in case he gets the wrong time. I'll get there early. And I realise now how that affected my life. Which is why I've always wanted to be a strong part of my children's life. Because I feel the pain of what I felt. That's the biggest regret, biggest pain I ever have. I have had the similar sort of pains now where I don't get to see my youngest son. That's been stopped for 5 months ago because I get Osmond warnings. The mother used that to stop me. But I've been getting them. She knew I was getting them when she fell pregnant. Just an act of nastiness. I feel that really bad at the moment because I feel the pain that my son's feeling. I know he's feeling that pain because when I was seeing him, he would squeeze me around the neck and wouldn't let go. Just kept squeezing me and squeezing me and squeezing me as hard as he could. Not just a quick squeeze, but just kept his head in there. And I thought, this boy's trying to tell me something. There's something, he misses and loves his dad, but he's telling me something. I've just found out that his mother's been seeing a fella for over a year, having family holidays with him. She's telling the court she's a struggling single parent. Far from that, can assure you. The amount of Botox in her head. She ain't struggling.
And as well, Kev, if you had one wish, what would that be?
If I had one wish. For myself or for the world?
For yourself.
Overturn this conviction. And then I can, if I overturn this conviction, well, but when I overturn this conviction, my life will change and many other people's lives will change. Massively.
And before we finish as well, Kev, is there anything that you'd like to say?
How come I never got a slice of cake with my cup of tea? No, I've loved this. I've loved doing this podcast with Aaron. He's got a great